We are very glad to see you out this afternoon. Of course, we invited those individuals for the most part who we have given books to. Thank you for coming out. And today we're going to have a lively discussion about the book, The New Jim Crow. And our leader for today, some of you all know, Ms. A.J. Sipico from Topeka, Kansas. She works with the Kansas African American Affairs Commission, and I think Dr. Mildred Edwards is the chair.
She's the executive director.
That's right. And so we're going to turn it over to Miss AJ to do her thing right now.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? How's everybody this afternoon?
Good.
Okay. Now, I'm the one that came in on a cane. So if anybody gonna be, that's gonna be me. So how's everybody this afternoon? Oh, that's so much better now. Now I feel better. I don't have to get up and start. I do have my whistle. Those who remember that. And it can get kind of loud. But the discussion about the new Jim Crow really is a community conversation, meaning conversation is for the community, not me necessarily. And so I really want to hear from you. I think it's the perfect segue from the art piece, and I'm still just, there's so many different things kind of swirling around for me. No, I'm at work. And steady want to send a text message. Don't you hate that? You tell them you're doing something. Don't call, don't text, and what they do?
Do it anyway.
Do it anyway. So then when you and then they tell you, don't send me messages in all caps, that means you yelling. So would you rather me call you and yell? Pardon me. A perfect segue from the art piece out front definitely gives us a lot of things to think about. And as I stated, to a couple of the ladies in the back, when we have to deal with race relations, I don't think it's comfortable for anybody. If we're really gonna be honest, which I'm gonna be honest whether anybody likes it or not, I'm just gonna be straight. Race relations, dealing with issues of race and the things that come about as a result of race relations, whether good, bad, or indifferent, are never comfortable. And so when we have to think about it, when we're prepared to think about it, it's difficult. So imagine when it's just in your face and you didn't have an opportunity to prepare yourself and to, take your deep breaths, take your Xanax, whatever you need to do. And I don't say that lightly because, we have to do what we have to do to cope with whatever the issues are in our lives that we need to cope with. So, everybody that's in the room, have you read the book? I mean, some people haven't, and it's okay. If you haven't read it, hey, this is my third community conversation, and I think the last one, probably half of the people in the discussion had not read the book. But wow, what a discussion we had anyway, so it's quite all right. So those of you that have read the book, I'm gonna start here. If you could encapsulize or tell me the one thing, and when I say one thing, the one thing that stood out to you the most about the book that you didn't know already going into it, what would it be? Something that you didn't know already going into it, what stood out to you, even if you've only read the first 2 chapters? I mean, I read the introduction and was just sitting there going, what? What? Let me read that again. What? Okay. So then I jumped over to chapter 3. Am I the only one that skips chapters and then go back and then go to the end and then come back to see if, come on, don't just look at me, because I'm not going to give you a summary of the book.
The percentage of African American males that are incarcerated. that blow your
Wow.
mind.
The percentage of African American males incarcerated
In the
as
United States.
in the U.S. as opposed to other demographics. Now, I think to put that in context, when you compare the population as a whole, okay, just as a whole, African Americans make up this much of the population. Here's population, here's African Americans, right? But African American male, here's the population of those incarcerated. And here's the number of African American that doesn't, something about that doesn't quite balance. Do we have any thoughts about that? What about that stands out to you?
One thing that I got out of it, I mean, you know, that when we compared slavery, Jim Crow, and then the where we're at now, the caste system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of really. I thought the more things change, the more they stay the same. That's kind of what I got from it.
So slavery, Jim Crow, then the war on drugs, because the caste system was just kind of that imprisonment mindset. So slavery, and slavery started, indentured servitude.
Right.
That was the nice word for it way back when. And we do realize that slavery started well before there were African Americans brought in, or Africans were brought into the equation. We do understand that, right? We all are clear about that, right? That Africans were not the first ones brought into slavery. Are we clear about that? People couldn't pay their debts, so then they had to go and work. And so then next thing you know, greed gets into it, and you start developing new countries, new lands, and you start realizing, well, hey, these are some hard workers, and I think we can get some workers from over there, and we can get some workers from over there, and and we going in to go get them is probably not going to work out so well. So the best thing for us to do, I'm going somewhere here. The best thing for us to do is I need to pay you to go round up your people. Does that sound familiar? Why does that sound familiar? How does that compare from then to now?
Not much difference.
I'm sorry?
Not really much difference.
Why?
Well, for one thing, we knew of the indentured slaves. The early settlers tried to enslave the Native Americans here, but what was hard about that was if they ran off, it was kind of hard to find them. They didn't really stick out that well. So then it became so where they had to find, and they used the excuse. Remember one thing that's in this, they always used the excuse, well, it was in the Bible there were slaves, so therefore it is all right for us to enslave somebody that we don't think is one step away from being an ape, for instance. So my take to it is also coming from Canada, where whenever we had blacks up there, they played football, so they were a hero. Here, I think it's a guilt trip that has never left the white society's mindset. I'm not saying all whites are like that, but I'm saying it's something it's a mindset that, and I'm also getting from it is that the disparity, because if I get arrested, say for instance smoking a joint, and Derek gets arrested for it, he might go to jail, I might just get a slap on the hand. So there is a reason, I think it's going back to maybe Lyndon Johnson's day of of trying to make where people are equal through education, through bringing a society that is down on the bottom of the ladder and bringing it up. Within a 20-year period, they decided to turn around and keep the people on that bottom end, keep them down there. And the only way you can do that is to put them in jail and keep them down so that they can't gain any reasonable be equal. I think it's deliberate. I think it's deliberately done for that reason. And the best way to do that is to make people, like with this last trial, for instance, where this guy shot into that car, somebody asked the question, if those boys had been playing country and western music, would he have shot into the car? But because they were playing hip hop or whatever they were playing, for some reason the mindset is always of fear. And I think it's put over the news. It's in our culture. When you see a cop movie or anything, it's usually the black guy that's doing all the crime. Maybe even if he isn't, he's portrayed as not as smart as he's put in a negative way, whatever.
He's stereotyped.
Yeah, it's stereotyped.
So now, if I paraphrase that, the objective then, from what this gentleman is saying, is that the prison, this whole idea of incarcerating African Americans and having the sentencing be the way that it is, more stringent on minorities, because it's not just African Americans, it's people of color. So that's African American, that's Native American, that's Hispanic, so I want to make sure that we're clear about that. Is really in an effort to keep minorities in a certain bracket where they're in a position to not be able to ever really measure up and gain equal footing with, the only bracket that's left is white. Okay, I gotta be real. So, now I've heard that with just straight economics. I've heard that argument with economics across the board. Pull money out of education so that those that are impoverished then don't have equal access to education. And we know that if you're not educated as well and you don't have those levels of education, then certain job opportunities and economic success are not available to you. We get that, right?
Yes.
But if we take his argument here and apply that to the prison system, you do understand that once you have a felony, you don't qualify you sure can't vote. You can't get benefits to go to school. You don't get housing. There are no federal benefits do you qualify for. Most state benefits, food stamps, any kind of aid to families with dependent children. If you got kids, you will probably lose your children because you can't provide for those children. So you really are locked into a substandard way of living.
And a big part of why I think that there's not been a whole lot of progression, like in how racism, just not the people of color, is the big sociological issue of generational racism. Because as times go on and generations come about, the people that you're around the most who might have grown up, like my grandpa was born in 1932, and he tries to impose that upon everybody, but it's one of those things like, how it's different and how it's the same. Right. And I have lots of colored friends, and they're not, my black friend or my Mexican friend, they're my friend.
Yeah, right. You don't see the color.
Right.
Right.
But that's the thing, people, like some people these days, they don't see that. But what was I gonna say? Crap, sorry.
It's okay, it'll come back.
Hopefully.
AJ, I have a question.
Yes.
And a few thoughts. The first question I have, are we still in the mindset that prisons deter crime? And I'm glad we have our good friend, Mr. Dick Highsmith here, to talk to that issue. Do prisons, do jails deter crime?
I think the answer, the obvious answer to that is no.
I can go back to, I read a history of why jails were started in the first place. Prisons, it was supposed to be such a bad place that if you were put in there for whatever crime, when you got out, you would turn around. It's actually been a failed system throughout history. There are countries that don't have prisons.
So I want to continue this.
Yeah.
So if it does not deter crime, then why do we have such high numbers of folks still being incarcerated? And so by default, are we saying the system is messed up?
And also, why are we, building more prisons than we are schools? That's another thing.
Can I show you something to help you think about that?
Go ahead.
Quite by accident, I watch morning news. I love the Today Show. I just do. And back in November, I happened to catch an interview with this guy, Bernard Carrick. He used to be the police chief in New York. And he was tapped to be the Secretary of Homeland Security by President Bush. But oh boy, he got himself some trouble with tax evasion and lying to the White House. Oh well, so he had to go to prison. 3 years he did in prison. And so he got out in May of 2013. And he did this interview with Matt Lauer. And I stopped dead in my tracks listening to the interview, and when it was over, y'all know I went right back on the internet and said, I gotta watch this again because I'm not sure I heard what I think I heard. And so when you talk about, does it work? You're talking about a man who dedicated his life to putting people where?
That's right.
In prison.
But then comes out of prison and says, it's not working, the system is broken, and it is deliberately unfair to people of color. And you're gonna come out publicly and say that? Don't think it put him in the best light, but it's a 5-minute interview that I really would like to share with y'all.
Let us begin this half hour with the Today exclusive. Bernard Carrick is a law enforcement legend in New York. As head of the notorious Rikers Island jail, he ran one of the largest jails in the country, and he's credited with turning it around. Carrick went on to lead the New York City Police Department during 9/11. And with his career on the rise in 2004, then President George W. Bush nominated him to be Secretary of Homeland Security. But that came to an abrupt halt when Carrick pled guilty to tax evasion and lying to the White House. He served 3 years in a federal minimum security prison in Maryland, and he was released back in May. We spoke to Carrick exclusively earlier this week, just days after his home confinement ended. And I began by asking how he's doing.
I feel pretty good. It's all a transition. It's a pretty intense transition to come home.
Talk to me a little bit about daily life. What was it like for you?
There isn't much you can do in prison. My daily life consisted of reading. I think I read over 300 books while I was there. I did a lot of writing. I exercised a lot.
Thought a lot, I would imagine.
You do a lot of thinking.
Did you mix with the other inmates?
Yes.
Any fear about that?
No, but I was with men that was sentenced to 30 years. A lot of people were skeptical. A lot of people were, a lot of people didn't want to come near me, didn't want to talk to me. But over time, I got to know many of them. Over time, I got to help many of them. Over time, I got to teach. I taught a life lessons class there.
You talked about your writing in prison. A year in to your sentence, you sat down and you wrote what I'll call a white paper, okay, on what was going on around you. A lot of these inmates, according to you, feel as if their lives are over, basically. Even when they get out, they will never be whole again. One inmate told you that prison is like dying with your eyes open.
These young men, they come into the prison system, first time nonviolent offense, low-level drug offense. The system is supposed to help them, not destroy them.
At the core of your argument here is that these minimum mandatory federal sentences are not doing what they intended to do.
No. You know what? When I came into the system, I didn't realize it's a nickel. Hold it. Feel the weight of it? Feel it?
Yeah.
I had no idea that for 5 grams of cocaine, which is what that nickel weighs, 5 grams, you could be sentenced to 10 years in prison. I was with men sentenced to 10 years in prison for 5 grams of cocaine. That's insane. That's insane.
And I'm listening to you, Bernie, but you know, I can almost hear people watching this interview say, yeah, it's tough, but Bernie Kerik and others broke the law. That's what you get.
That's one way to look at it, and that's the way I looked at it before I went in. Except the reality is, you want people to be punished. You want to punish them? Okay, punish them. But don't destroy them. Anybody that thinks that you can take these young black men out of Baltimore and D.C., give them a 10-year sentence for 5 grams of cocaine, and then believe that they're going to return to society a better person 10 years from now, when you give them no life improvement skills, when you give them no real rehabilitation, that is not benefiting society.
Your perspective is unique here.
No one in the history of our country has ever been in the system with my background. No one. Unless you live within the system.
You have to be in the bars? On the other side of the bars?
You have to be on the other side of the bars. You have to see what it's like to be a victim of the system, so to speak. There's no way to do that from the outside.
There are going to be people saying, wait a second, this guy ran the New York City Police Department. He ran Rikers. He put people in jail and he threw away the key for years and years. And now that he screwed up and he's a convicted felon, he's had a change of heart. And they're going to say, give me a break.
This has nothing to do with me. I did my time. I'm done. This is about a system that is broken. The system isn't going to change if you don't open the eyes of the American people in Congress. If the American people and members of Congress saw what I saw, there would be anger, there would be outrage, and there would be change, because nobody would stand for it.
We're going to have more of this interview tonight on Nightly News and then on Meet the Press. And again, he's going to be here live on Monday. I think what's going to happen, people are going to listen to him. Some are going to say, I don't want to hear it from this guy. And others are going to say, you know what? His perspective is something we need to hear.
It's a unique perspective.
Well, it's incredible to see somebody who spent his life in law enforcement now saying, almost serving as an advocate for those who are serving time in prison. It's fascinating.
Is he going to do something to try to help make a change?
He would like to have a voice in this debate. Whether anybody allows him to have that voice because he is in fact a convicted felon is still questionable.
Now, when you get somebody like him who has basically been, like he said, there's nobody that has lived on the inside. He wasn't doing it as a part of a program. He wasn't doing it as an interview. I mean, he was a convicted felon. I mean, he couldn't just go in and then ring the bell and say, okay, I'm done now. I got all my information. I'm ready to go home now. It didn't work like that. And so when Dr. Parson asked the question, is it working? I think we can all answer that question pretty quickly. No, it's not working. The biggest issue that we find out about in the penal system, that more people are being locked up outside of drugs for mental illness. That's right. Okay, what is the criminal justice system going to do with people with mental illness? It's kind of like it's a stash. Why are they building more prisons than schools? because it's a private industry now.
I know.
It's private, and so it makes money, right? So then the question becomes, since we know, and you all, those of you who know me, you know I'm the so what girl. We know what the issue is. We can read about it till we're blue. We can listen to interviews till tomorrow. We see it. The question is, what are we willing to do about it? What are we willing, you know, what's going to be the catalyst that's going to make us say enough? I cannot look in my community another day and see another family lose its father, lose their sons, lose their mothers. I mean, enough is enough.
I think the first step it's going to take for it to become aware in all of our minds, to actually have a government who's willing to listen to the people of this country and make the changes for the country that we need. Because last time I checked, we were for the people, by the people. And
I agree with you. Now I got to play devil's advocate for you, because our office is right across the street from that dome place up there in Topeka, that beautiful new dome place.
yeah,
And I have to say, it is really disappointing to see when legislation about matters like this comes up, ain't nobody up in there. There's nobody, the people ain't there to speak. The people aren't there.
Right.
So, I mean, how can we expect our government to listen to the people and the people ain't up in there to say nothing? 3 people, and the same 3 people shaking our fists is not going to get the job done. And when we've got our legislators telling us, do you all know how hard it is for us to get this legislation through, when our opponents sit there and look at us and tell us, when we get ready to vote, we look up to see who is actually supporting your legislation, and we don't see nobody up there. When we're in committee and you have the opportunity to have your say, we don't have any written testimony from your communities. Nobody's saying anything. We have forums like this. We express our irritation, our anger. We'll march in the streets. We'll buy t-shirts, hoodies, jeans, we'll buy everything. And we'll do everything. But at the end of the day, the people who really need to hear our voices aren't hearing it.
Right.
And so that's where the disconnect comes, getting that voice from way out here to where it needs to be. And so that's why I ask, okay, what needs to happen? Doesn't mean everybody got to take a day off and get on a bus and go to Topeka. Not necessarily. Your written word has just as much clout as your vocal word. Just as much presence. Think about the legislation that gets passed for different demographics, and think about all the people that show up at the Capitol to make sure it's so.
That's right.
Now, I just want y'all to be aware. When there's legislation that affects the Hispanic and Latino community, I don't know if they documented or not, but I tell you what, I ain't never seen so many. I can't see out my window for the buses all the way around the street. Buses, vans, cars, they pile out like clowns at the rodeo. I'm not kidding y'all. When there are issues about disability concerns, forget parking around the Capitol. Just skip it. Because every parking spot gonna have a disability hanger. And they're gonna be buses, vans, trucks, everything. Because they are there.
Well, I think, and I understand, you're talking about people wanting to be involved, and they do get involved in a certain, but I think that a lot of what happens in the black community, and I will say this, when they have jobs and stuff, good jobs and things like that, and I found out a lot of this become true, depending on, then also it depends on the person themselves too, that when they start doing stuff and they start showing interest in things like civil rights and things like that, well then they start getting problems from their employer. Oh, wait a minute, well these guys are troublemaking groups, what are you guys doing involved with these folks? And they start feeling in jeopardy about their jobs and things like that. So that's why a lot of times you get black folks to be reluctant to do different things. Not saying all the time, because they're not all the time, but I mean, that's why you get some of them that are like that actually don't go and protest and do a lot of different things because they have repercussions to deal with when they get back.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, you'd be surprised.
Might also be the idea, boy, I've just made it, I don't want to upset the apple cart. You know, suddenly they're clapping me on the back, telling me what a good fellow I am, or gal, whatever. I don't want to upset that apple cart. But I know that they had a thing on.
That's the rule more than the exception too.
Yeah, I know.
Especially when you're in a small conservative community like Hutchinson. That's the rule more than the exception.
Wow.
Well, and don't you think maybe it's a lack of having the information on what they should be doing? And I went to court not too long ago with a young man, and I realized that his entire family had lack of information on how the court system even ran. You know, his mother keeps telling me, she kept telling me, if he doesn't admit to anything, there's not anything they can do. They can't put somebody in prison if that person says they didn't do it and he didn't do it. I said, you know what? We need to talk to the lawyer. No, we're not going to talk to a lawyer. We need to bring the witnesses in on his behalf. No, we're not going to bring any people in that's going to cause a problem. And I said, we've got to do something to help your child, or he's going to be in prison. And you know what her answer to me was? I think you must be part of the plan. I said, no, I'm not. And I said, we got to call NAACP. We've got to get somebody to help your son. She didn't know what the NAACP was. So I think sometimes there's people who are out there, and I sat there and cried. She thought I was crying because of the names that she was calling me. I was crying because I thought how many thousands of young men are going to prison because their families, their parents don't know how to help them and are so fearful of having anybody help. She's like, no, my son's innocent, and he's just going to go tell the judge he's innocent, and I'm going to take him home with me. And you know, it breaks my heart because I'm afraid she's not going to get to take her son home with her.
So how would we then, because this is Hutch. I mean, not that we don't care about other neighborhoods, but today, it's all about the Hutch. Is that all right? It's all about Hutchinson. So what are some strategies then to address some of that?
Let's start with an elementary school 2 miles from right here. It has half the students with people locked up. So 200 students in Lincoln Elementary, and over 100 students have a loved one incarcerated. So that's 2 miles from right here. That's one elementary school. We could look at the other ones, but Lincoln typically is the highest percentage of students have incarcerated loved ones. So there's 100 kids in one elementary school 2 miles from right here that have a loved one locked up, whether locally or nationally. So that's one place to think about. What are we doing for those 100 kids right there?
You've got another thing here. When I first came to Hutchinson approximately 43 years ago, you didn't have homeless people. You have homeless people here now. I worked in January in the clothing center, Fair Price Clothing Center. You'd be surprised how many people came in, and not just people of color, these white people, colored people, everybody, that are living in their car because they can't afford a place to live. There's no jobs that'll pay them enough to be paying $400 or $500 a month rent. You know, in one particular time we had the jobs here. We don't now. Daryl and I worked for a company that had about 3,500 people. Now they'd be lucky if they got 200. And all of these jobs have gone overseas. So when you've got a community that doesn't have the best job you can get is working for McDonald's, it's kind of hard to live. And people are going to do whatever they can, whether it's selling drugs or shoplifting, to have something in their lives.
So you've got an economic opportunity issue, because there are limited economic opportunities. And then, and you know, my thing used to be, well, go get an education. Well, that's not always, that's a lot easier said than done. Because not everything you get your education in is there a job available in either. Okay? And not always is there funding available for you to just go get an education. And depending on what your background is, you may not qualify for whatever funding is available.
That's the truth.
That's just real. You know, and even if all of those things fall in place, if you have kids and you don't have childcare, okay, so, I mean, as a community then, we're looking at, I mean, systemically speaking, you know, what comes first? Was it the prison? Did the prison, the imprisonment of minorities cause the downfall? Or did the downfall contribute to the imprisonment of more minorities in your community? I mean, how do you see that? How do you see the breakdown in your own community? How do you see what?
Did it not start in part because of the war on drugs?
But I mean, did that happen? I mean, that's what ushered in the new Jim Crow as a whole. But that may not necessarily be how it went down in every neighborhood or in every community. Every community didn't crack down the same way. You know what I'm saying? In your metropolitan areas, that's pretty much how it went down. Now, how it filtered out to the more rural areas, not necessarily the same way.
Well, I mean, I can speak from experience. You know, when I was younger, you know, I used to run the streets, and you know, yeah. And I've seen a lot of really good friends of mine. You know, they'd be selling their weed or selling their whatever. You know, and the minute the cops gave them heat, they were done. You know, like they pulled themselves out of that street because they had a fear of what would happen to them. And I think that there's a lot of reason why there's been a very low respect for like the criminal justice system as a whole, is because people are scared of it. I mean, I can speak from personal experience. I pulled myself out of that, you know, and now it's easier for me to say that I've got a job now and I can earn that money instead of sitting on the couch and have somebody come over and like make money that way. It's a lot more fulfilling. But there is that fear of those of us who aren't well off already, that okay, now it's time for us to do something different because we don't want to go.
And you know, and I think he had a good point. He said that he was afraid of the penal system, afraid of going to prison. But I think, you know, when it's generational, when all of your uncles are there, when your brothers are there, and when your dad's there, it's not that scary. Because I know that are people who, I knew one boy said, I knew it was not going to be bad because my uncle's there. You know, I know it's not going to be bad because my dad's there. So, you know, I think, and they go on the weekend sometimes to see their relatives. You know, they start at a very young age, going to the prison to see their dad, going to the prison to see their uncles. And so they're kind of desensitized to it. I had one boy say, you know, if I end up going to prison, you know what I can do when I'm there? And I said, how about college? Well, you know, if you go to prison, I'll be able to do this, I'll be able to do that. And I thought, he's so immersed in it and it's so common to him, it doesn't seem frightful to him.
He's already determining his opportunities available to him in prison.
That's right, he can do his artwork in prison. Yes.
Like on her line there, I worked at the prison here in Hutch back in 2002. They can study they can become lawyers. They got a whole library full of books. They can become lawyers. They can become everything possible in this library. And all they do is sit around and read. But see, we had a couple of them escape. They get used to that prison lifestyle. They get used to not having to do anything. Just laying around, they can work, they can not do anything at all. So they'll escape just to get a longer time because that's what they feel comfortable doing. They feel comfortable of, hey, if I escape, I'm gonna serve more time, because they don't, that's what they're used to. They don't know what the outside is.
And you know what, that, I blame that on the prison system, because if you was making it hard like it was like you're supposed to, so that you don't wanna come back, you wouldn't do it. Because first of all, you can go in there and you can still throw gang signs up, and I don't care if you're black, white, gray, grizzly, Hispanic, whatever. They still have gangs in there, they still do whatever they want to. They can get together and put their Roman noodles together. I mean, we hear, you know, like I said, I got a brother here, he's a supervisor for the Mustang program out here. My mother is a dental assistant out here for the prison, has been out there for years. So I know exactly what they do, the mentality out there, and I'm talking about they don't care. They let, and people, the correctional officers and stuff, they let stuff go on too out there because they don't care. The thing of it is, you know, so that's what I'm saying. If you're trying to build something, if you're trying to rehabilitate somebody, the first thing that you want them to do is get a job, get an education, do something that you're going to better yourself, so when you do come out here, you are going to be productive in society. Well, you don't see that because, like I said, you don't have the officials that care. They don't care how long you stay in there. You know, they don't reinforce anything for you to do. And you shouldn't be. There shouldn't be one person that goes to the penitentiary that should be able to lay up in their bunk all day long without going to some kind of an educational program or some type of what do you call it? Hands-on training. Protect or something like that. If you did stuff like that,
that's considered cruel and unusual punishment because now you're forcing them to do something that they don't want to do. Well, and if you take their cable and things away from them, then that's cruel and unusual. And if
that's the system letting you know they'd rather have you in there locked up so they can keep you in there for the money purposes than anything else.
I mean, haven't we heard this on television when different systems? And so, I mean, really, for me, I guess I look at it and say, well, you know, do I want to take on the prison system? Not so much. Now that's me. Do I want to take on, why? Because that's just, I got enough out here in the community. I really want to help some of the kids and the families not go down that street over there and give them some opportunities and point them in a better direction to steer clear of that and help those that are out in the community to say, look, some people do reoffend because it's easier in prison, just because it's, you know, hey, I don't have to do nothing. But then there are those who reoffend because they don't have any other option.
That's right.
But see, there's some of us that do care, that try to correct their behavior, but then they turn around and say, oh, that's not fair, he's ganging up on me. I have my rights too, as a person.
Yes.
But, you know, what do you do then? You're trying to correct their behavior, but then they go against you and say, oh, I don't have rights when he's doing that.
That's the system with itself, like I said. If you had a system that when you came in and automatically, you were automatically, when you came in there, knew that you had to go, as soon as I get in there and hit this bunk, or as soon as I go in here and I hit this cell, I gotta get up every morning, I gotta go to work, and I gotta go to school. If that was automatic, and if it was automatic, and it was done every day, you'd have a different, better turnout. And I'm thinking, the thing of it is, it's a big $1 billion industry. You can get it, I mean, so it's no big deal. And I'm gonna tell you, it is working for some. They said the prison system is working because it's keeping black folks off the street. It's working for a lot of folks. Yeah, it is. It's working.
It's working for something.
Yeah, so I'll put them in jail for a piece of bubble gum if I got to. I don't like them no way. You get a lot of people to tell you that. You know, oh, they won't tell you the face, but you hear people tell you what someone else said. You know, oh man, shoot, they need to be locked up. They ain't no good no way. All of them thugs, they're gangsters, they're so and so anyway. You know, so yeah, it's working to keep us off the street. Yeah, it does.
But then there's
In South Hutchinson, and Jim can attest to this, they had one time what they used to call broad acres. It was back when they used to house old people that were sick, and they just almost like putting them in a prison. They were going to convert that into a halfway house. And the good citizens of South Hutchinson got together and decided, we don't want these people in our neighborhood. Not that they were even in their neighborhood, because this place is out in the country. So they ended up not having it. But it was a place, right, that would have trained people that when they got out, would train them so they could go to different parts of the state and get good jobs, or at least get jobs, learn how to handle themselves in housing, and interact with themselves and other people. And so whenever somebody does come up with something that will maybe help people once they get out. The communities don't want it anyway, so they shut it down. So, you know, when people say, well, they're having a better time in prison than they are on the outside, I think a lot of that is a bunch of hooey. I think it is because that's the only place they can get their meals and everything. If you can't go out and get a job and better yourself, you're going to go back to whatever. It's just like a woman or a child that's being abused. They can't find somebody that'll help them. They're going to go back to their abuser. Especially if they're getting fed.
Well, I mean, and the prison system is a huge joke anyway. Going off what you said, I mean, it's like a multi-million-dollar hotel.
I'm gonna say, because they sure have to pay to be there.
Yeah.
They do have to pay. I mean, and of course,
Sounds
I
like
didn't.
a good business.
I didn't know how. You know, I've never been arrested. I've never been arrested. My dad was one of the first black U.S. Marshals in this country. And so, you know, I listened to some of his stories and, you know, of course I'd be sitting back like this. And my dad would tell me things and tell me places not to go and people not to be around and, you know, and I just, okay, yes sir, and deuces and keep on moving. But finding out and listening to people who have been incarcerated talk about how by the time they're done with all of the fines that are assessed, when they finish with how much it costs per day to be incarcerated, and all that's tallied up, and they do work, some type of something, whether it's folding the sheets or, you know, we laugh about, you know, the traditional prison job is pressing license plates. Well, some prisons do the license plates. So we'll use license plates for an example, you know, whether it's license plates, whatever their job is, they get paid whatever that wage is. Some areas, you know, they actually get paid, and depending on what the security level of their program is, they actually get paid better wages than we do out here, okay? But what happens is, part of it goes into their little account that is supposed to be there for when they get released, and the other part goes against their fees and you know, that pays off their restitution and what they have in terms of their hotel fee, as you would call it. So typically, when they're released, depending on how long their sentence is, they should have a few dollars when they are released. But some, their sentences are so high, they gotta stay so long, and they such bad actors. Like the one guy says, I don't know, I keep reoffending. Really? Yeah, every time. I've been in every prison in Kansas. Okay. And I'm here now, and I'm thinking, oh Lord, and the only reason why we're sitting in here talking to y'all is because y'all getting ready to get out. And I'm thinking, Lord Jesus, you've been in every prison in Kansas, and now you're getting ready to get up out of here. Now I need to know whose neighborhood you're finna go in, because I need to be watching. I mean, been in every prison and sat there and told us, and I just keep reoffending because I just don't want to do right. But I never have enough money. I can't get a job. I can't find no place to live. How am I supposed to make it off of $20 a week?
That's how my stepfather is.
I'm like,
Ever since he was 20, he's been offending just to go back to prison. And he just got released last year. Less than 3 months later, he was put back in jail for 7 years. He's constantly getting in and out of prison.
They make it easy for you. They make it easy for you to do it, and they want you to reoffend so they can keep the money coming.
so does that fit with this? So do we blame the war on drugs for that?
Well, I think everything plays an equal part though.
Oh, you gotta be accountable for your actions too. Everybody's gotta be accountable for what they do.
I'm trying.
But I'm saying,
I'm sorry?
I said, well, the fact that you can see that there's disparity in sentencing and the way that it's handled. I said that it introduces some of those people that keep coming back. That introduced them to the system in the first place, where had it been more equal form of justice, who's to say that would have been the case in a lot of instances? So, I mean, you know, it has, the system and how they deal with offenses has to be addressed.
And let me stick with Darren's point, and hopefully we can walk through this. If there are differences in terms of sentences, I like to go from the very beginning. Why are so many African American males in prison? Give me the reason or reasons. Let's walk through this now. Give me the reason or reasons as to why. Now we know about differences in sentencing, but what are the reasons for the incarcerations? And then once you identify the reasons, I have another question.
Oh, you mean the specific crimes that they
Yes.
committed?
Yes.
That's
Is it drugs? Is it abuse? What is it?
You know, drugs is not as high on the list as we might think. A lot of times you would have assault and battery, you'll have burglary, you'll have, you know, some violent crime, but not nearly as much as, I think if my statistics serve me right, and I don't have my computer, I'm sorry, this is not mine. If my statistics serve me correctly, I want to say it's about 20% for African American men or young men are violent crime, which would be murder, you know, murder, rape, you know, that kind of thing. Everything else is
The book says 70% of them are in there for low-level crimes.
exactly
Or
low. It's just drugs.
Drug-related crimes.
It's you know, simple stuff. And I don't want you to think I'm minimizing, but it's things that, you know, we all make mistakes, and if we all got in trouble, like what's happening to these folks, and got arrested and sentenced as heavily as these folks are for the same things, would none of us be sitting to these tables?
So my point is this. If we can identify the reasons as to why, then don't you think we should focus in on those reasons to deal with the problems that we have? Because we cannot put everything in one pillowcase.
So focus on the drug charges. I mean, even though marijuana, for example, for the state of Kansas has not yet decriminalized marijuana, okay? They trying. But you get arrested as a black male with marijuana on you, count on doing time.
I think we gotta look at it too another way. There was a thing on the news and they finally got her out of prison, or out of jail. There was 3 of them, 3 at different times, 3 African American ladies in San Francisco got caught shoplifting. They were given 30 days in jail and it took them 2 years to get them out because they kept losing the paperwork. Now somebody's doing that on purpose. Somebody finally caught it, some attorney finally caught it, and they're starting to discover that in a lot of cases, not in a lot of cases, but in some cases, that people are deliberately losing paperwork so they can keep somebody in the jail system, because in some states and some counties, you're getting paid, the city's getting paid by how long they can keep people in jail. They get paid so much a day for somebody being there. It's not to their advantage to let them loose.
I want to say it was in the Wichita Eagle or something.
Yes.
See, I don't know all the Wichita papers.
Yes.
It wasn't something in the Wichita
Yes.
paper not too long ago about somebody getting paid to send either juveniles or kids, something with some children but somebody in the court, a judge or somebody was getting paid off to send some children somewhere.
Yeah, that was in Pennsylvania, but this.
But we talking about here in Kansas.
Okay, yeah, they had a big deal.
You got some, I mean, so that kind of stuff is happening. You see, so it's, I mean, you can go after it, but you gotta then hope and assume then that the people who are sitting with the robes on, the people who are the attorneys, the people who, I mean, that every person in the system all the way around are after the same thing you are. Because if not, you still have a problem. So let's go on the side of great and say that everybody's on the same page.
I think the real deal on this whole deal, and I tell you what, the main thing of it is this: racism. Period. It's racism, and it's been taught. It's been here for years. It's been there for years. That's where a lot of it stems from. People's been taught certain ways where they were brought up, and they've been that way, and so they take that way everywhere they go. So whether it don't make a difference if you're doing a crime here, if you're doing something, if you're somewhere and you're a different color and you're not supposed to be doing that, well then you need to be dealt with. And that's how it goes with it. And that's the mentality from kindergarten all the way up to the 90-year-olds. I mean, it don't make no difference from gray to grizzly. It doesn't make a difference. This is what it's all about. It's just racism, period, in general. And like I said, that's what it all boils down to. Because if it wasn't for that, people would know how to treat folks. You know, it says we're supposed to be a Christian nation. It talks about that type of thing. Everybody wants to be, it says, oh, we're Christian, we're Christian. Well, it says, first thing it says, love ye one another as I've loved you. And if you're a Christian with that, it shouldn't be no problem what color you are. You ought to be able to deal with folks. And you ought to be able to be fair according to whatever they may be, wherever you go to a judge, I mean, you're a judge, and you got somebody come in, if it's a young white kid and he's got powder cocaine, well, he needs to go do 10 years, just like the black kid that had crack cocaine had to go do 10 years, because you got to have the powder to get the crack. So what I'm saying is this is the difference. See, it's about racism, and that's what it's all about. And who has the power to be able to do what the powers that be, whoever do what they want to do. And that's what it's all about. And there's no sugarcoating, period. That's what it's always been. It's always what it's always going to be. Until folks find out how to learn how to treat folks, how to be decent, it's going to always be a problem. And that's what the main problem is. You're black and I'm white. I think I'm better than you. And you shouldn't be. You've been slaves for years. You guys should still be slaves, as far as I'm concerned. You shouldn't have nothing. You shouldn't have. That's the mentality that a lot of my Caucasian brothers have, and I mean I'm saying there's a lot of other folks as well. But I'm just saying this is what we're dealing with on an everyday basis. That's what the judge thinks. That's what he's a man too. He's not nobody superior, so he has his own thoughts as well as anyone else when he gets ready to sentence a kid. He knows who wants to sentence. You know, I mean, we know if he wants to give him 10 years, if he wants to give him 5 years, or you know what? Well, this is Judge so-and-so's boy. Well, you know, he got in trouble. We're going to give him a slap on the hand. We're going to give him community corrections. Well, this kid here, he messed up. You know what? It might have been his first offense, but we're going to give this kid, because he's a black kid, I'm going to give him 3 years. You need to think about it. You know, so this is what it's about. It's about racism, basically. That's what it's all about. Period. And Jim Crow is based on racism.
So the question still is, how then, as a community, do you begin to put some type of safeguards in place? We've got our babies. You know, that my biggest concern is our babies are growing up, and they're coming up behind us, and they just don't, I mean, we're losing them. We're losing them faster than anything else. Our kids are getting sucked down these drain pipes with all this stuff. I mean, they're either getting shot down in the street, they're getting, you know, snorting stuff up there. Well, they ain't snorting it so much now. They taking pills. And I mean, as fast as I figure out what new pill that came out, they done got something else. I didn't even know what bath salt was. Well, and by the time I figured out what bath salt was, they had something else.
Well, see, on that subject, you know, like us as a community, we can try and do something.
It's like, I didn't know. It's like I can't keep up with all of the things that are going on. So the question is, how then, and what is the community, how is the community going to connect? and stay connected in such a way that you can say to those 100 babies at the school down the road.
I can tell you how folks need to start thinking about other than themselves. If you start thinking of others, and you could make a change. People can make a change if you start thinking
And
about
so what does that
others.
look, you know, I'm tangible, what does that look like?
I teach English at Nickerson High School, and in my classes, it looks like respect in my classroom. I don't care what color you are, I don't care how tall you are, short you are. Everybody in my classroom treats each other with respect. We talk about that. We're getting ready to study the Jim Crow laws and Declaration of Independence and how, you know, it's all written through the white man's eyes, history books, and how that looks in reality. One of my students right here, and I think it does come down to education and how you treat each other and how you respect yourself.
Well, if I can follow up on that, other than these kinds of things, that, you know, that bring people together, in this community, it's still kind of, there's still a kind of informal segregation that we see,
Right.
don't you think?
Right.
That, I mean, just, that when you've got a jury, say, or a judge, that a lot of times it may not even be a consciously sort of malicious decision. It's a matter of, that's not somebody that I know or like somebody that I know. You know, that I think we still live fairly isolated in this community after all these years.
That's it. Well, I think for the first time, probably, well, it's been going on for a few years, but first time in American history that we have this mindset that our children aren't going to have it as good as we did. Mm-hmm. So when, like, they were showing a film about some people in the Appalachians, whites in the Appalachians, who aren't got jobs. Well, who are the first people they blame? They blame the blacks. Well, they wouldn't blame the blacks if it wasn't for the media telling them that it's because of the blacks that you don't have a job. It's a concentrated effort to keep people divided. Darrell and I have talked about this. It's a constant effort by the people that are on top to make the people on the bottom think it's somebody else's fault. I had a friend of mine that was Hispanic, and he used to tell me, he says, no matter how bad you are, how off you are, you can always try to find somebody else that you can blame or say that is worse off than you. It has to, you do it to make yourself feel good. And I think when we see something I found out just recently, that all our aspirin, steroid drugs that are legitimate to take, and your antibiotics, none of them are made, none of them are made in the United States. They're not even made in Europe or Canada. They're all made in China and India. And you know, when they were moving these things out of the country, nobody that in these communities that work for these companies jumped up and said anything about it. And when we're taking away jobs and shipping them overseas, we don't really have that hope that things can get better. And it just goes, goes from the, say, the middle white class, it's going to go all the way down to the bottom of the people that at least had any hope to begin with. And I think this is where we've got to change things. We've got to change things from the bottom and start pushing them up, because we were discussing this today, that in church, that if somebody on the top keeps getting it, isn't going to keep pushing it down to the bottom. It's from the bottom it's got to be built up. And that's just where we've got to really get going, because we did it through the unions back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. So this is where we've got to do it, and I think even the way Martin Luther King, you got to say that it's got to be a people's movement. We can't depend on the people in already there to say, oh, suddenly get heart and say, oh, gee, we're going to suddenly make things equal. It has to be brought from the bottom.
One of the group in Kansas City, Kansas, that's the very first group that had a community conversation around the new Jim Crow. You know, I kept, just like I'm asking y'all, okay, so what does that look like? You know, I was like, okay, I hear you. So what does that look like? And this was all females. These are all women, all very well-to-do black women. And so, you know, I'm thinking, Lord, I am in this up to here because I really want to say something else because y'all about on my nerves. You know, I mean, because you get to the point where it's like, okay, I get it. I understand. And, you know, these folks were they were frustrated. You know, there were tears. It's just like, you know, and I know everybody's just like, these are our kids. You know, they were really passionate about the young people. I said, so what you gonna do? What you gonna do?
See, people want to sit back and not take the initiative to do something about it. We have too many followers in us, so we need more leaders, because leaders get things done.
Well, I tell you what, I made a suggestion. I said, y'all all about these babies. Y'all all about the kids. Get the information to the kids. That was all I said. And one little lady up front, she said, okay, so can we have a reading group with the high school students? I told her, I said, absolutely. As soon as I said absolutely, it was like these light bulbs start popping on in the room. Because all of them could see high school students that potentially are gonna go to prison. If not their children, then their children's friends. Okay? See that, you know, when you start looking at it, stop looking at it as these are people far removed from you. These are kids that live in your neighborhood. This is your community we're talking about. This is probably the future doctors, the future lawyers. These are your leaders that we are trying to rescue. You know, I'm still kind of twirling about 100 of these kids down the road have somebody in their family that is incarcerated. So that ups the ante then for them, that increases the odds against them that they will live a life outside of incarceration. So that means that something has got to happen positively in this community to help them. Does it mean that the people that are already incarcerated are beyond saving? Nope. But we can't do everything, Dr. Parson. We cannot save everybody at the same time. You got to start where you can. And so their plan is, and they said, okay, we're going to do this new Jim Crow with high schoolers. And so, of course, they look at me as the project director and say, so can we get more books? I said, we are totally out of grant money. We cannot order more books. Well, how are we going to get books? I'm looking at them like, okay, how many of y'all is in this room? It's like 60 of y'all in here. How about you recycle your books? You take the books that you have. I didn't get to finish my statement. Now they're ready to take their books. Now they've already collected their books. And they want to go, they've laid out their plan for 4 high schools, and they're going to do 1 high school at a time. And they're going to talk with the principal and the counselors to select the group of kids to go through the class, and they're going to do them 1 at a time. I said, make it manageable because y'all have to do it. I cannot. I don't have it. I don't have it in me. I don't have it. See, I can't run this. This is a community project. These are your families. That's just one thought. Another in Topeka, this was at Washburn. The law professor took 20 books, and she's taking the law students that are second and third year that are going in to be prosecutors. She said, oh no, y'all going through this book. I'm sitting there looking at her like, oh, this is gonna be good. And I really sat back, I said, oh, this is gonna be real good. You gonna make them do what? She said, oh no, they're gonna go through the book as a class. She said, because I want them to think about the impact that their sentencing is having, not only on the person, but on the family and on the community. And I'm thinking, you are taking a book read and making an impact statement and turning it into a class. Do you know how many of you in this room could just have a group at your house and take 5 or 6 people and say, do you understand the impact of this? Okay, so you don't want to read the book. Did you know that this book is on YouTube, every chapter? You can listen to it. You ain't got to read it. It's on YouTube. Every chapter, including the introduction. Dr. Michelle Alexander does her, what's her name, the seminars on every chapter. She'll do, there are tons of resources. You can get the information out there in any way, shape, form, or fashion you want, if this is the method you want to go. But there are resources that are available to you. The African Affairs Commission, that would be who I work for. As your project director, I will help you craft a project. That's what my job is, to help you reach your community in the way that you feel it will be most productive and beneficial for your community. But we cannot leave the table and not have something tangible that says, after reading this, after understanding the problem, we have a plan, and we are willing to put some skin in the game to make sure that something comes out of it.
While we were out looking at your sculpture, you were talking about the athletes who are over there. Like, for the college, like, they have a lot of pull on everything that goes on here. And former Pep Band member, we have a lot of pull as well.
Right.
So, and what most people don't understand is this for everyone to know.
Yep.
Because this directly involves every single person, whether you live in Hutch, Burton, wherever you're at. Like, I live in Burton, it's about 20 minutes from here. Our town's on meth lodge. We have 6 meth houses.
Wow.
One's on the corner, kitty corner from the school. That, because I was in the music room. I still have kids who look up to me from the elementary school and say, because we had the group called Social Norm, I'm sure you're familiar with it. And like by my senior year, I was president of that group, and we were doing everything. Like, where we need to be is we need to have people who are at a high standing. Everybody loves sports.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody sits down and talks to these athletes. They could go to these like middle schools, high schools, and speak to these kids and say, hey, here's the deal. Here's what we want you to know. Because we were talking about education is what's going to get us everywhere. Education is going to get us to where we need to be. And after we pull enough people from the community, that's when we can see changes higher up. But it's not until people, and like you said, everybody in this room can do something.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to do something like that as a school and make it a school-wide project to get the word out, there are funding opportunities through a myriad of sources that I can direct you to, that you can apply for to help you in doing that. Service, community, because that's community service. Whether you get it or not, that is community service in its highest form. And there are organizations out here that will give you money hand over fist if you are a youth, and you guys are considered youth if you're 25 years old and younger, just saying. Don't have to be babies and teenagers. But if you're youth helping other youth or helping to educate other youth to help get them out of bad habits or prevention, hand over fist. Hand over fist. It's out there. Because people realize that us old fogies, I like to call myself an old fogey. I can still get in the classroom. I taught school 25 years. I can still go in the classroom and do what I do. Hands down. I can walk in an elementary classroom and handle it. And them kids will do anything I ask them to do, all the way up to any other age range. But I just don't have the time. I can't do that. I can write the program, train you how to do it, and send you on your way. Bye, be gone, see you later. Really, but that's what I do. That's what I'm trained to do. I train you, you go do it, because it's your community. If you can get them involved, that's when you're gonna see the best results, because it's theirs. That's where your sustainability is gonna come from. And that's when you're gonna be able to see your city leaders are gonna start waking up taking notice. Because it's not somebody coming from somewhere else. They're gonna see their own people who ain't going away quite so easily. Because they right across the street. They right down the street. They right up the way. That every time they look up in the grocery store line, that same person, how you doing there, Mayor? How you doing? You doing all right? You giving any thought to that project I gave you? You did? Did you read it? Oh, you ain't had time to read it? Okay, well maybe you'll have time to read it by next time I see you. And then you see them 2 days later. Oh, how you doing there, man? You still ain't read? Oh, you still ain't read it? Well, I'll email it to you again so it'll be on the top of your email list just so you won't forget. I moved to an all-white community in Washington State, 2,400 people, y'all. I'm still listed as the only black female resident. How many black women? And the mayor, I'll get him in a minute. Yo, Mayor, you take some beautiful pictures of Westport. They're gorgeous. But I need to do what you're doing. I need to know what you're doing for the city. The pictures are great. That's nice. But what you doing for the city? Because the kids still don't have lines to cross the street by the school. You see what I'm saying? And I'm on Facebook. From here. The kids still don't have. So these are things that you do and that you get everybody else to do. Empower those kids at the elementary school to start asking questions. Why can't we get anti-bullying measures at the school level? Let the kids get involved with that. Do y'all know we have Youth Day, African American Youth Day at the Capitol, where we want to bring particularly minority students to the Capitol so they can learn about how their government works? Have kids not a clue. Get them up to Topeka. We'll feed them, fix them all up, teach them, train them, and then send them back here. So then they can then teach everybody else. For the whole year, they have activities that they can engage everybody else in to help move things forward in the community. But if we don't have anybody that's willing to do it, same thing. Michelle Alexander took a huge leap of faith to write the book. And y'all know she's taken a quick move to write again, right? Y'all know that, right? Y'all know she's writing again, right? She's writing another book. Oh, yes! Because she said that this was only scratching the surface. I don't know if I'm ready for the next one. Any more questions, comments, concerns? Get a game plan. I nominate him to get to work with you to get your game plan. Now that's just my nomination. And him to be the enforcer. That one right there with the glasses on. Anything, do we have any more?
Oh, I got a question. Are there programs that can be used, you just said you were talking about through the educational system, about the churches? Because I think there's a lot of children that their self-esteem, their ego, they may be torn down at school, but when they get to church, they're the star. And I'm thinking that would be a good place to meet them where they're successful, where they're comfortable. Are there programs that work through the churches?
These programs work through any nonprofit organization. It doesn't have to be school. It can be church. It can be whatever. These kids can formulate their own organization. They can start their own. It doesn't matter. The group that I am currently work with is Bridge the Gap, and this is something that I do on my own time, and it's actually just came under my church that I belong to. So it's now considered a faith-based movement. And these are middle school kids who were, you know, not doing so great in school, but that's another story. Took science. I took the periodic table of elements to teach them how to teach teachers how to work with kids in poverty. So these kids traveled all around the state teaching educators who should know this already, how to work with kids in poverty. So these kids were selected out of over 2,500 candidates or programs. They were selected to go to Washington, D.C. in April to present this workshop at the National Service Learning Conference. How does that happen? Because you push them and you say, no, you can do this. Now these are straight A students, and now we're ready to open up to let anybody involved. So community members, it doesn't matter. They don't have to go to church. They don't have to be church members. They don't have to be nothing. They just have to be kids that want to get involved in serving their community. That's it. It just so happens that the group is housed at the church. There's another church that asked us yesterday, we want to get our youth group involved. I said, okay, what do you want to do? I don't know. I said, well, you figure out what you want to do and we'll help you do it. That's it. Because it has to be theirs. So whatever the program, whatever they want to target, if it's, you decide, what do they want to target? What is it in the community that they want to address? You decide what you want to address, I will be more than happy to help you put a plan together. If it means writing and developing a program, then I will do my very best to carve out the time necessary to help do that, or put you in the right direction, put you in place and in touch with the right people that may already have programs to help do that. But Youth Service America, write that down, Youth Service America, YSA.org, Youth Service America. Them's the money folks. You can get money at the college level, sir. $5,000 service learning grants that they'll give to the school so that you can then in turn engage kids in the community in service learning activities throughout the school year. So then you can go to all the different schools and use your pep band and use your sports initiatives and have $5,000 to engage those kids in doing that. I'm just saying. That's just one example. I got over $18,000 from them in a year, doing some of everything. This is how you get your projects and you work in your community and you fund it. And you get lots of notoriety for it because they believe in go big or stay home. So you stay with me, keep Kayla at the table. Keep your pictures going, oh yes, because they love it. And then they'll send for you and send you to Washington, D.C. or wherever they're having their conferences and they'll train y'all up real good. Oh yeah, they'll do it. They will pour into you the resources that you need to keep helping you develop more programming that is unique to your community. Because you will tell them everything that you need to learn. You will tell them what it is you're trying to accomplish in your community, and then they will come back to you with, now this is what we can offer you for your area. That's called Youth Service America. I'm just saying. How you doing? That's what I can offer you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Sorry, grown folks. Anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns? Oh, gosh. No other discussion? That's it? All right. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I got one comment, I guess, because I'm kind of uniquely situated in the world in that I kind of pass for white, but I also am a Native American. and I also have a job where I work with my hands. And so I would just like to make the comment that I'm seeing not only racism in this community, but also a great deal of economic caste system in this community that I think needs to be addressed. And the people in the best position to address that are going to be at the people at the top of the economic ladder, I think. And I have the experience constantly of being in somebody's yard, working away, pulling their weeds and doing whatever, and their teenage kids will walk past me, and I'll say, "Hi, how you doing?" And they don't even see me because I'm beneath their notice at this point in time. And I'm just saying that respect thing, that needs to come bottom up, top down, color to color, man to woman, and also in terms of profession. You know, if you're a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, you know, everybody's got a job to do, and it's important that everybody respect that everybody else is there doing what they know how to do, doing what they can.
Exactly.
Getting the community to come forward, and so when I hear people saying, well, it's racism, I'm thinking it's racism and it's economic classism, and it's just a feeling like it's okay for some people to be more equal than others, and I think that's got to be addressed by everyone in the community. Everyone in the community. And I guess the only other thing I have is that when someone goes and stops somebody, makes a traffic stop, you know, a couple people out at 2 a.m. in a car, you know, I would love to see the question asked, if I was stopping someone and I realized it was one of my friend's kids, would I be putting them away? Would I be hauling them? I'd like to see that question just sort of float through when people are making that initial contact, that not just oh yeah, we've got to have sensitivity training and whatever, but say, would I still take the same action if this was my friend's son or daughter that I'm contemplating taking right now? I would love to see that happen. I'd love to see that change in this community.
Well, on that note, we had our first bias-based policing community advisory board training in December over at KLETC, and our second one has been scheduled for the end of June. Yes, it has been scheduled. We just have not put it out yet, but we have scheduled it for the end of June. And so I would highly recommend you put that on your calendar and bring that to the table, because everything that the people who brought questions to the table, every one of those questions were addressed in that training that people brought, every single one. Any suggestion that, you know, these are things that we would love to hear more about. They had it out there. It was pretty interesting. I mean, we got some honest feedback. It was really, really good. And we got recognized. We got a letter of commendation from the Secretary of, what's the AG's office? The Attorney General for the state of Kansas for that particular program. And, you know, that says a lot that, you know, not only did they enjoy what they heard about the program, but are excited that we're going to do it again, and are encouraging that we do it again. And so we didn't pull no punches. It wasn't a, you know, beat up on white people, beat up on black people, now let's coddle it. No. This is real talk, straight talk. Let's get down to the crux stuff, what's going on, and let's everybody come to the table so that we can work together to create an environment that people can actually sit down and talk. Because if we don't learn how to communicate, we're never going to get anywhere. And that's going to be the first step. So.
And maybe for a second, you can tell the grouping about that coming up in June, because I know also Big Highsmith was there at that session.
I mean, This training basically helps it brings law enforcement officials and community members together to teach about bias. It's not just racial profiling. Racial profiling has one definition, but bias is a totally different definition. And so when you start looking at bias, you begin to find out things about yourself. And it's more about, let's learn about me and what biases I may have and how we think, how we respond to one another, how we respond to the world around us. It's important that we understand how law enforcement is trained. Why do they do the things that they do? Why do they take certain positions? Why do they follow certain protocols? Why do they have certain, you you pull up or you ride by and you see 2 police cars or, 3 police cars and you see officers doing certain things? That training will help us to understand that. We were able to watch and understand why do they shake the trunk, and I'm just like, oh well, that didn't have anything to do with anybody being black, white, green, purple, or yellow. You can't see me yet. You want to make sure ain't nobody in the trunk. Duh! So it also gave the law enforcement officers an opportunity to understand how do community members think. What are we thinking when you're stopping us or when we encounter you? What is the tempo? What are some of the things that we are feeling? What's the level of danger that we may be feeling? What's the level of danger that law enforcement officers are contending with on an everyday basis? And so when you come in and you start to learn and understand what it's like on both sides, then you also learn how to begin to communicate and get rid of some of those barriers that would prevent you from being able to be objective in how you handle law enforcement. Does it mean that there are no biases in law enforcement? Of course not. There are some officers that are clearly biased. You're gonna have that in any industry. It's not gonna stop with law enforcement, but it does give us some places where we can take presumed bias out and recognize bias within ourselves and not project that where it doesn't belong. So that's a 2-day training at KLETC. It'll start like at 9 o'clock one morning. It'll be all day long, overnight, and then end at 5 o'clock the next afternoon. So Dr. Lori Friedel will come back from Florida and be with us on that second day. And oh my gosh, we got to participate in some of the training that the law enforcement officers went through. So it'll be in the summertime, so maybe we'll get to do more outdoor stuff this time because it was a little chilly. So we didn't get to do too much outdoor stuff because it was much too cold for all that there. But they fed us mighty fine. So it'll be really good. Yes, sir.
Got a question about the Lincoln School comments. Have you been able to identify the differences between the families that have offenders and the ones that don't?
Identify in what way?
In any way. What makes the difference?
Partially, Lincoln is closest to the correctional facility, so we have outside folks moving in.
So just the location.
Part of it is economics. Part of it is there's a variety of things.
Well,
you'd have to interview the current principals and folks involved there. My numbers would be from 5 years ago,
okay.
but I think those numbers are steady. So, but we do have a lot of people move into our community who have loved ones being in the correctional facility.
Okay.
But that's not the primary reason why there are folks there.
As a school district, is the school district trying to identify those differences?
Well, it's difficult to identify what those students, because it's changing week to week. If you have a loved one locally, it could be just a 30-day thing. So it's, there's privacy issues and there's some other things. But most of the times the students will self-identify themselves. And there are certain things that we could do in that realm. We're constantly in need of folks doing mentoring or a few minutes a week, partnering with education and meeting with those kids one-on-one. And so
You could do those, or you
Mm-hmm.
do those?
Yes.
We want to thank you for coming out this afternoon. Let's give it up for AJ. And we will be in touch with you, AJ, and you in the room about additional kinds of activities we're planning.
I'm
Okay.
sending around my, don't tear the thing off. I'm sending around my Post-it notes. Just sign in, so to speak, with your name, your email address if you want contact, if you want me to have contact information. If you are interested in working with Dr. Parson and this young man, what's your name, sweetie?
Ryan.
Ryan, this Ryan right here, and Derek right here. In putting together a specific follow-up plan. I'm gonna call this the Jim Crow Action Plan until y'all have a better name for it. If you are interested in working on that specific action plan, just put, write that down on the sticky note. I wanna help with the action plan or whatever. And so I can make sure to email you and let you know when they have set a meeting date or what have you, and we'll move on from there. But I would say in the next 10 days, y'all should have some type of correspondence because we don't want to let any grass grow. We need to move forward. Amen, amen. Praise the Lord. Bless the cook.